Yesterday, Square Enix posted an interview with the team behind the upcoming Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles, and they talked about their philosophy behind this remaster, why it came to be. And while there are a few pieces of cool news, there's one big piece of news that I know is going to upset a lot of people. Now, before we talk about that, let me just put this out there, and please listen to this part, don't skip past this. Let's be respectful. Let's be respectful in the comments. Let's be respectful online when we're communicating with Square Enix. There's a way to share our constructive criticism without being jerks about it, okay? So with that out of the way, I want to read the quotes, their questions and answers in their full context because I think it's really important so I don't misconstrue anything. But to get it out of the way, the big piece of bad news is they're not going to be including any of the War of the Lions content. So no Luso, no Balthier, no Dark Knight, no Onion Knight, and there were a few extra little battles, so those battles won't be there either. So that's really disappointing, but before we dig into that, I want to read why they decided to make those decisions. So let's read the answers to those questions. So the question was, why did you decide to focus on updating the original Final Fantasy Tactics rather than War of the Lions version? So they answered, I and other members of this development team were not directly involved in the War of the Lions, but I do believe that content in that game did fully meet expectations for players at the time. However, we looked back on everything nearly 30 years later during the creation of this game. We asked ourselves, those who created the original Final Fantasy Tactics could do to bring this game to a new generation of players. It was through considering this question that we came to the conclusion that the most appropriate path for us was to pay respect to the original game's experience and recreate that in the best form possible. And the next question says, did you consider adding elements from Final Fantasy Tactics: The War of the Lions like Balthier, Luso, and the Onion Knight and Dark Knight jobs? We did of course consider the addition of new jobs, abilities, and characters, including the jobs featured in War of the Lions. However, the original version of Final Fantasy Tactics is a very complete game, both from a game design and story perspective. If we were to make major changes, it would only be a loss not only for fans of the original game, but also for those new to the title. With this in mind, our first step in reviving Final Fantasy Tactics in the present was to adhere to the original and put a spotlight on the original game's characters and jobs, as well as the original gameplay experience. The development team were passionate when it came to bringing an experience as close to the original as we could, and as a result, we have recreated and used the original VFX and sound effects, something I hope fans of the original in particular will enjoy as they play. Now, look, I can totally understand their perspective of none of us worked on War of the Lions, so it doesn't really make sense for us to pull that in. That said, I think that's a silly excuse. The latest version of the game that us fans have been playing for years and years is War of the Lions. That's the one that we know the best. That's the most recent version. And this is a business. This is not about like keeping it holy and sacred from the original. It's fans' expectations, and our expectations is to include everything. And I appreciate that they're wanting to stay respectful and loyal to the original game's vision. And I understand that a lot of that content was not in the original version, and a lot of those original team members didn't work on it. But still, like for me, I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy Tactics. I love the original. But to me, the definitive version right now is War of the Lions. So for them to say that if we were to make major changes, it would not only be a loss for fans of the original, but also for new players. No, it's literally a loss because you're removing content. How would adding stuff or just literally keeping the stuff that was in War of the Lions be a loss? That doesn't make any sense to me. That does not make any sense. So I know a lot of people watching, and I know a lot of people online are like pretty upset about this, and I totally get it because it feels like we're getting less content and we're getting charged more for it. So from that perspective, anybody that doesn't feel like buying this game on that alone, I totally get it. Like, we have War of the Lions, and let's be real, there's an emulated version out there and people have modded the heck out of the game and added all kinds of crazy characters. Like, I've seen mods with like Solid Snake and Link and all kinds of nonsense. So like, why pay extra for this? So if you don't want to buy this now because they're removing all that stuff, I totally get it, and I don't blame you at all. Now, before I get more into everything, let me read all the extra additions they're going to have to this remaster. So they mentioned that they're going to have new event cutscenes, or they're going to add extra little story bits. And they said that there was actually story stuff that they wanted in the original version that were cut because of time constraints. So the fact that they're adding that back in is pretty cool. Some of it they said was like with Gafgarian and Agrias, like some of the more, not the main characters, but not side characters either. So I think it's cool that they're adding that extra context and adding extra story bits to the game. So I'll be curious to see what those end up being. This version is actually going to have difficulty settings, whereas in the original, there was really no difficulty setting. So there's casual, which will be a lot easier for people that just kind of want to enjoy the story. There's standard, which I believe is going to be as close to the original difficulty as possible. And then there's going to be a tactical mode, which is going to be much more difficult for those, people that like a real challenge. You can actually get in there and make it more difficult. The game was pretty tough as it was, so I'm not sure why you would want to make it difficult, but if you've been playing that game for decades and want a challenge, then I suppose that might be for you. Now, this one's a bit of a spoiler, so maybe skip ahead like 30 seconds because I know people got upset in the comments the last time I mentioned this. Spoilers, Cloud is in the game, and in the original version, you got him really late, and then you had to go get his weapon, which was another additional thing you had to do. And because of that, he was incredibly underleveled and he was kind of useless. But now they're going to make Cloud available much earlier in the game, which I think is awesome because now it might actually give us a chance for him to be useful in some way. So I don't know exactly what that's going to be. I've never played with him fully leveled up because he was so useless. So it'll be interesting to see how that will play out in this version. And they also mentioned that there's going to be new voiceover audio for in-game battles, like the attack sounds and when people die and stuff like that. Although I gotta say, some of those death sounds are iconic to me. But the fact that they're adding them in and making them a little bit more modern and a little bit less cartoonish is cool, but I still personally kind of prefer the original. But again, the original version is in this package, so maybe I could just go play that at some point. So my overall thoughts, let me just say this. Final Fantasy Tactics is one of my favorite games of all time. And the fact that we're getting it on modern platforms is amazing. And so I'm going to be there day one no matter what, despite the fact that they're removing the War of the Lions content. Like, I just love this game. I want to stream it for you guys. I want more people to play it. I don't know how many people that watch my channel don't even know what Final Fantasy Tactics is. I've never seen it before. Might be playing it for the first time, so they don't even understand what the War of the Lions added stuff is. I will say, I think it's unfortunate. Like, I totally get that the original team members are working on it, and they feel like that added stuff was not in their original vision. But again, like I said earlier, like, you have to think what the fans want. And I gotta tell you, I've been online the last day reading Twitter and different comments and different Discords, and people are not happy about this. They are very upset, and I get it. Like I said earlier, it feels like they're charging more for less, and I appreciate all the added things they're doing, and they're gonna make it, much more playable, but this is just a big disappointment. And another piece of added context that I probably should have included earlier is that they said the hardest part of this remaster was just making it because they did not have the original source code. Now, it wasn't very common back in the day to keep the source code. So, that makes a lot of sense. That happened with the Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 remasters. They didn't have the source code for that either. So they kind of had to remake this from scratch, or just kind of pulling old versions from just like, I guess, the file. I don't really understand how that works. I'm not a developer, but the fact that they kind of had to redo this all from scratch is really interesting. So, kudos to them for putting in the hard work and just making it happen. But overall, like I said, I'm excited for this game. I'm going to be there day one. I'm going to be streaming it. I'm going to continue to cover this game in case there's other things they might announce for it. It sounds like they've pretty much announced everything there is to share about it. There's not going to be any extra characters or anything that new they've added. It sounds like they really wanted to stay faithful to that original game, but you never know. Like, if this does really well, they might add DLC later. I know that would be incredibly scummy to add like the Dark Knight and Onion Knight and all that extra stuff as paid DLC. I'm hoping they do the right thing and they see the fan feedback and they add it in for free, like in an update. I really hope they do that. I hope they continue to add to this game, but that might be wishful thinking. I'm just happy that we have this game at all. So let me know what you guys think. Are you upset that they're missing all that extra content? Are you going to be buying it anyway? Does it not really matter that the War of the Lions stuff's not in there? Have you never even played the game in the first place, so you don't really care? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, this was announced earlier in the summer, and there was a lot of showcases. I know it's really hard to keep track of everything and all the announcements. So if you want to see the 12 best reveals from this summer in terms of JRPGs, make sure you watch this video next because I've summarized everything into one handy video, including some games that you can play this summer.